morning. Welcome to Rising. We've got another great show for you today. It is Monday morning. We're kicking off a fantastic week, I'm sure, here in Washington, D.C. I had a nice summer weekend, did a lot of fun things. I feel very refreshed and ready to discuss the news. How about you?
I had a power cut that caused me to sweat.
Oh no! Oh no, that's terrible.
Not specifically to my apartment. The whole neighborhood went out, so I had a less relaxing weekend than you, it sounds like. But we got there in the end.
That's not what we mean by speaking truth to power.
That is not. No, that is not the way. We don't do that in this instance, for sure. I think you and I are going to get started with a bit of a disagreement. So why don't you tell me what is on your radar?
There's going to be a lot of that today, I think. Big news breaking over the weekend. In the final days of his presidency, Barack Obama pushed intelligence officials to exaggerate the evidence for Russian malfeasance in the 2016 presidential election and the collusion story with the Trump campaign. Now, that is according to current Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who has released documents from that time period that says she has proven the existence of a treasonous, her word, treasonous plot to undermine President Donald Trump and persuade the public there was something illegitimate about his victory in 2016. Here's Gabbard explaining the details of that plot on Fox News over the weekend.
Over 100 documents that we released on Friday really detail and provide evidence of how this treasonous conspiracy was directed by President Obama just weeks before he was due to leave office, after President Trump had already gotten elected. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an issue that is so serious it should concern every single American because it has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic.
Gabbard continues.
What we saw occur here, as the documents we released detailed, was that we had a sitting president of the United States and his cabinet and leadership team, quite frankly, who were not happy with the fact that President Trump had won the election, that the American people had chosen Donald J. Trump to be the next president commander-in-chief of the United States. And so they decided that they would do everything possible to try to undermine his ability to do what voters tasked President Trump to do.
Now, Gabbard's key finding is this. In December of 2016, after Trump had won the presidential election, intelligence officials prepared an assessment that found that Russia did not have the capability to affect the outcome of the election, i.e., Russia could not hack the voting machines or have some power to actually change the result. That's important. Now, this assessment, however, was withdrawn. It was pulled back, quote, based on new guidance. That was on December 8th. The very next day, according to the documents released by Gabbard, top intelligence officials, including James Comey, John Brennan, James Clapper, they all convened at the White House where President Obama himself apparently directed them to reach stronger conclusions about Russian election meddling. Now, if you're confused, here's a helpful summary from journalist Matt Taibbi. I'll just quote it directly. I can't say it any better than he did. In sum, just before Obama was to receive a briefing that contained no reference to significant Russian interference, the briefing was called off and a high-level meeting of White House security officials was convened, after which Obama himself tasked them with a new assessment that would lean toward a more aggressive conclusion. Although this new effort was to be directed by Clapper's office, the critical job of divining Russia's motives would be given to the CIA and Brennan. It's suspicious, again, this is according to Taibbi, that a presidential daily briefing was postponed to make way for what the ICA ordered at Obama's request, fishier yet that the evidence that Putin intended to help Trump came from a classified annex containing Steele dossier materials, but the smoking gun is that these eventual conclusions leaked instantly, not 1 or 2 weeks after Obama ordered the ICA, but the same day before any group work could possibly have been done. End quote. Indeed. Now, this is my take. The most egregious part of all this is that the mainstream media instantly went nuts with Russiagate fervor the same day as that meeting. The New York Times reported that, quote, Russian hackers acted to aid Trump in election, citing senior administration officials and intelligence sources. The Washington Post ran with similar sensational claims. What followed, viewers will well remember, was 2 years of constant fear-mongering in the media over Trump's alleged fealty to Vladimir Putin. It was insinuated over and over again that Trump's policies toward Russia were directed by Putin, that Putin had him over a barrel, it was a kickback for influencing the election on his behalf, and so on. Much later, of course, the public learned that Russian efforts to affect the outcome of the 2016 election, Well, they were not particularly impressive. They did not hack voting machines. Their influence operation on social media amounted to very little. No evidence emerged that the Trump campaign coordinated with the Russian government. We know all that already. What Gabbard's latest revelations show is that senior intelligence officials also knew this, and they knew it all the way back in 2016. That was their conclusion. Russian influence was not a very big threat. That's the truth. Fortunately, the truth wasn't salacious enough for the mainstream media, and wasn't politically useful enough as a weapon against Trump for outgoing President Obama. Now, I don't like to throw around the word treason lightly. Without further investigation, I certainly would not use that term. However, I have been repeatedly informed by liberals and Democrats and members of the media that undermining public confidence in the outcome of a presidential election is a very serious transgression, at least when Trump does it. Will we now be treated to thunderous denunciation of Obama and his coterie of intelligence officials for encouraging the media to gleefully report that something just wasn't adding up when it came to Trump's 2016 win? I think I'll be holding my breath on that one. So I have to imagine, Niall, you don't think this is treasonous on the part of Obama, but what's your verdict?
I do not. My verdict is that in all the time you and I have been doing this show, I think this is the radar I disagree with the most of any of them.
Let me have it.
Sometimes I agree with them in large part, but this one I just don't at all. I find the memo that Tulsi Gabbard released extraordinarily unimpressive. And the reason why is that she is conflating two separate points to create a sort of a fog of confusion. There are two separate questions here. One is, did Russia meddle with vote counting or election machines to change the outcome?
Which we know is a no.
Which we know is a no, has always been a no, was a no under Obama, is a no now. The second question is, did Russia meddle in the election with the intent of helping Trump? The answer is yes. The answer was yes under Obama. The answer was yes
in terms of the social media stuff.
So in the social media stuff and the DNC stuff regarding Hillary Clinton. So in those instances, there isn't really dispute about these things. The Senate Intelligence Committee investigated in 2020. That was a committee where the Republicans had the majority at the time, and it found that there was indeed what Marco Rubio, of all people, described as irrefutable proof of Russian meddling at that time. So Gabbard is taking these 2 points, sticking them together, and trying to create the impression of wrongdoing where none really exists.
But if you look at those headlines, because I went back and read those stories from the New York Times and the Washington Post, and they are, frankly, in my view, very characteristic of that time period from 2016 to about 2018, where there was just constant reporting on Russia and Russia's influence on cable news, on CNN and MSNBC, and in the pages of mainstream news, day after day after day, often pegged to the wisdom of intelligence sources, saying behind closed door, we're talking to intelligence expert people who say this is so much worse than you could even know, certainly suggesting, in many cases, I think, but that both the influence on social media was decisive and that it could have been more than that in terms of the hacking. I guess I wouldn't necessarily put that on Obama the way it's being put on here, but that was a level of irresponsible reporting, to my case, that was indexed to what these intelligence officials were saying, and now we're finding out behind closed doors. It kind of reminds me of COVID, where behind closed doors they were like, yeah, there's nothing to see here, or it's not that much.
But the issue of reporting and the headlines is an entirely separate issue from what then President Obama did. You can take issue with the use of the term hacking in headlines. Did it mean the DNC or did it mean voting machines? Maybe there was creative ambiguity or irresponsibility there, but Obama and the guys close to him didn't do anything wrong.
Good morning, and you know what? Welcome to Rising. That's our show. We've got a great one for you today, as we do every day. I'm Robby Soave, and this is Lindsay Granger, and
our decor is still there.
The what? What's still there?
The decor, that's still there, so that's a good thing.
I've already moved on emotionally, psychologically from those things.
Hopefully the audience has as well, but in the meantime,
they're
you
missing
guys are
the
not
desk.
over it yet.
They're missing the desk. I know
on
they're
your radar?
missing the desk. It's not on this subject, it's on something else. It's on a subject that is near and dear to all of our hearts. Hunter Biden is speaking out. Former President Joe Biden's notoriously troubled second son several wide-ranging 3-hour interview with YouTuber Andrew Callahan. While their conversation about Hunter's struggles with alcohol and drugs will certainly be interesting to many people, it was, of course, Hunter's comments about the Democratic establishment that most struck me. You see, Hunter is furious with the leaders of the Democratic Party for, in his view, betraying dear old dad. Here he was railing against Jon Favreau and the rest of the Obama bros at Pod Save America.
The Pod Save America saviors of the Democratic Party, with four white millionaires that are dining out on their association with Barack Obama from 16 years ago, living in Beverly Hills, telling the rest of the world what black voters in South Carolina really want, or what the women in the waitress living outside of Green Bay, Wisconsin really believes.
Hunter also addressed his dad's bad debate performance, which effectively ended Joe Biden's campaign.
I know exactly what happened in that debate. He flew around the world, basically, the mileage that he could have flown around the world 3 times.
Yeah.
He's 81 years old. He's tired as They give him Ambien to be able to sleep. He gets up on the stage, and he looks like he's a deer in the headlights. And it feeds into every story that anybody wants to tell. And Jake Tapper, with literally how many anonymous sources?
Ambien, he blamed Ambien. I would just note when Roseanne Barr sent that offensive tweet about Valerie Jarrett, the one that ended her career, she eventually explained it was partly due to her taking Ambien. In response, the drug company that makes Ambien released a statement at the time saying that Ambien does not cause racism. Can't wait for Ambien to put out a statement saying the drug doesn't transform you into a bad president either, but I digress. Hunter Biden also railed against George Clooney and implied that it was the actor's ego that prompted him to melt down and publish an op-ed in the New York Times encouraging Biden to get out of the race. Hunter's rant on that section was so profanity-laced I can't even read it, play it rather. We have to bleep the whole thing. According to Hunter, what happened is George Clooney was mad that Biden didn't recognize him at a fundraiser, a detail that was previously reported in Original Sin, of course, the Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson book. Bleep George Clooney, says Hunter in no uncertain terms. Now, here's the deal. Conservatives are certainly enjoying watching Hunter Biden rail against all these people that they, too, don't like. The Obama bros, Nancy Pelosi, George Clooney, David Axelrod, and on and on and on. I, too, am amused. I admit it. You got me by watching this man savage the Democratic intelligentsia. But we should also face facts. The Democratic Party betrayed Joe Biden for good reason. Their only mistake was not doing so earlier. Love him or hate him, Biden was not capable of serving another term, and his inner circle tried to conceal that fact from the voters. It's ludicrous thinking he could go on. Now, Hunter is loyal to his dad, and that's understandable. It shouldn't be any other way. But the Biden family, they're deluding themselves on this. There was no way Biden was going to win the election, and there was no way he could continue to serve as president even if he somehow did win the election. It's insulting our intelligence to pretend otherwise. So while I appreciate Hunter's willingness to speak his mind, I hope he continues to do so, if only for entertainment and shock value. His openness to challenging other authority figures in Democratic circles, it's great, but he's dead wrong on the substance here, as entertaining as it might be.
Everyone knows how I feel about Hunter Biden and his recent, even when we got glimpses of this interview last week, I did an entire lens on it. This is complete misguided frustration, because when you look at what he's doing, on the one hand, I totally get it, right? If my dad was getting criticized to the level, even the degree that you mentioned might be even too far sometimes with Biden, you start to feel bad, I would be defensive as well. But on the other hand, you can't be delusional. You have to be real. Like when we watched that debate performance, to blame Ambien, immediately I went where your mind went, to Roseanne. Immediately I was like, well, no one on his team thought that there couldn't be anything else they can do besides perhaps avoid Ambien the night before, or perhaps pull him from debating rather than ruin his entire presidential campaign, especially if you felt that he needed to sleep that bad, or change his travel schedule. Like there's so many things that an entire team can do to avoid a bad debate performance. He has to accept the reality. I also found that he's setting the bar way too low. He said in that interview, quote, just because someone gets old doesn't mean they're incapacitated. And I was so frustrated because I don't think that the voters said it was because Biden is getting old that he was incapacitated. It was the debate performance and what came afterwards that showed not only could you not beat Trump, but people were not confident that you were going to move forward and lead in a way that would push the party to where they were trying to get, at least the voters and the working class was trying to get. And so I think he's really disconnected from that. And it kind of tells the story of the entire family, which most people are blaming Joe Biden. Now Hunter Biden's adding himself to this conversation of just pretending that it's someone else's fault, aside from the fault of the Democratic Party and your dad, to decide that maybe this wasn't the best strategy way earlier than 107 days out from an election.
So on the, his idea that the Pod Save America bros don't really know anything, and David Axelrod doesn't know anything,
I thought
and
that
James
was
Carville
a little
doesn't know
funny.
anything.
Yeah,
Nobody knows anything.
everyone's so dumb
except
compared to
him. I mean, I don't know. There's something. I don't know that those. It's fair to say those people. He was, saying they won elections in the '90s when it was easier for Democrats. They won when they had Barack Obama, who's the all-time, the GOAT. So they don't. Their advice is out of date. There might be something to that. His point to George Clooney was like, George Clooney was so offended that Biden didn't recognize him, but he said, that Biden meets 1,000 people a day. He's supposed to have, or he should be if he's performing his duties, there's supposed to be the guy in his ear who says, oh, this is so-and-so, this is so-and-so, and I guess that guy either wasn't there or didn't do his job. On one hand. On the other hand, it's George Clooney. He has the most recognized, it was George Clooney and Julie Roberts. Shouldn't someone of your generation, maybe the Gen Z kids wouldn't recognize who those people are, but those are pretty recognizable figures to anyone, born between, I don't know, whenever he was born, 1940s to now.
I think, and also, George Clooney just caught so many strays in this interview. He's like, no one in middle America cares about your perspective. And while I understand that the celebrity perspective directly won't persuade votes, these still are American people that do vote. And they're telling you, as somebody close to the Democratic Party that donates and provides time and resources campaigns for Democrats in the past, this doesn't look like a good strategy. They're saying the quiet part out loud that many people were saying behind the scenes, but then very openly after a horrendous debate performance. Yeah. So I think, everyone, it did tickle me, the interview, but it was kind of ridiculous that even in the midst of 7 months into a new presidency, the strategy is who can blame who, and it's all different people. Yeah. Instead of here's the actual way forward. Here's how we win the midterms. Here's how we win the next election. And we're seeing little conversations come out.
Doesn't have any insights into how to win the midterms of the next election.
Well, he's arguing like he does. He's arguing like he has a plan.
And he doesn't, and he's not right, which is why I'm cautioning people who are saying, oh my God, Hunter is brave truth teller here. No, it's funny because we just don't like the people he's yelling about, but he doesn't know anything beyond those people. He has no addition. Their insight was he thinks Joe Biden should have stuck it out. He thinks his dad should have stuck it out. Joe Biden was going to get destroyed in the general election is what the polling. You have to believe in conspiratorial thinking about the polling, that the polling would be massively in error in Joe Biden's favor, which has not even been the case. In all these recent presidential elections where we've said the polling's not done a good enough job, it actually did a pretty good job this time around in 2024. 2020, the polling was way off because it gave Biden too much credit, and he actually won by more narrowly than the polling suggested. So I don't know, what argument you can possibly marshal.
Let's just say let's chalk it up to he's protecting his dad.
Yeah, that is
which is what anybody would do.
Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got a great show for you today. Happy Wednesday morning, I think.
Is it? I thought it was Thursday, and then my mind was like, but that's your Friday. So
it's Wednesday.
No, stay with me one more day. So, coming up on Rising, I'll be discussing how rural areas could be hurt by Republicans cutting funding for public broadcasting.
Also, more Democratic infighting, this time between Hunter Biden and the former Obama aides.
And Stephen Colbert is taking shots at his own bosses over their decision to cancel his show. But first, Robby, what is on your radar?
Let's get to it. President Donald Trump is furious with former President Barack Obama, whom he is accusing of participating in a, quote, coup against him in 2016. Trump is referring, of course, to recent disclosures from Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who has released documents showing it was Obama who encouraged intelligence officials to reach stronger conclusions about Russia's alleged meddling in the 2016 election. Now, according to Gabbard, the intelligence community was well aware that Russia did not hack voting machines, nor did the country have much impact on the outcome at all. But Trump's enemies in the Democratic Party wanted to paint him as a Russian collaborator, and so they overreached. The media, of course, followed suit, publishing headline after headline suggesting that Trump was a Russian stooge. Here is President Trump reacting to the latest news.
Now, we found absolute, this isn't like evidence this is like proof, irrefutable proof that Obama was seditious, that Obama was trying to lead a coup, and it was with Hillary Clinton, with all these other people, but Obama headed it up. And, I get a kick when I hear everyone talks about people I never even heard of. It was this one. No, it was Obama. He headed it up. And it says so right in the papers.
These allegations are extremely serious. Now, it's far too premature, in my view, to throw around the word treason. In fact, I don't like when anybody, Republican or Democrat, starts accusing their opponents of that. This reads less like treason to me and more like political weaponization of national intelligence for partisan purposes, which sadly has become a recurring theme. Make no mistake, there was an effort to delegitimize Trump's election to the presidency, and the argument was made by mainstream media mouthpieces leveraging the expertise of deep state spy masters. Former Democratic presidents Hillary Clinton and Jimmy Carter both said Trump was an illegitimate president in response to media reporting on Russia's meddling. This was the original stolen election theory. It's only been overshadowed because Trump's false contention that the 2020 election was stolen has subsequently received much more media coverage and much more vigorous pushback. Let me be perfectly clear. Trump should have never claimed that the 2020 election was stolen from him, but he's in good company. Look at the Democrats who said the same thing about 2016. And their main theory backing that up was Russian malfeasance, something intelligence officials privately discounted until they went to the White House and had a chat with outgoing President Barack Obama.
Deflection is the name of the game here.
Deflection.
Yes,
We're deflecting. The
conference,
deflector shields are up.
No, at that same press conference, the reporters asked President Trump, well, speaking of the Department of Justice, what's going on with Epstein?
Okay.
What's going on with your team meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell? What is going on with your team what's the conversation going to be like? Don't have these files released, be on our side. We're going to pardon you in a couple of years. There's a lot going on over here. And he's like, look at Obama. 20 years old, story time. Like, nobody cares about this story.
Not true.
But a bipartisan committee.
You're deflecting.
No, a bipartisan committee agreed that Russia was involved and not about the voting machines. That was never the source of what the bipartisan committee was mostly looking for. It's that they tried to infiltrate American minds and really in that way tried to infiltrate our democracy.
Infiltrate American minds?
Yes, by infiltrating our
It's like,
social media. No, not like a
this is
but also,
insane.
is it worth relitigating or is it worth deflecting for him right now?
We're not relitigating it. We're litigating it for the first time. It's
No,
not been
okay, is
litigated.
it worth opening up a new conversation, calling this, he's been calling this a hoax, right? So is it worth bringing it back to the forefront when there are core issues for your base that people want answers to? This seems like a huge deflection. You know it. You can't even sit here with a straight face and say you don't think this is, this has nothing to do with the present moment. No one is calling for this.
We will address that's not true that no one's calling for this. This has been a major conservative issue, MAGA issue for years. The Epstein stuff is important, and we will get to it. We're going to talk about that next. So let's put a little pin in that because we're going to come back to it. I don't like how it's being handled either. We agree somewhat there. But Russiagate was a big deal for years. The 2016 to 2018, 2019 period involved ceaseless. You forget how constant it was. If you could not watch 5 minutes of MSNBC without Rachel Maddow and everybody else going further into what started to sound like almost conspiratorial waters about the level of influence Russia had on the election, and that was the reason for Trump's foreign policy with respect to Russia was because it was a payback to Vladimir Putin. That was not a conspiracy. I thought it was a conspiracy theory, but it was mainstream. It went mainstream based on the intelligence officials, what they were saying to the media, often behind closed doors. So now we know. So this is why this is important, because now we know they went to Obama and said there's not a lot to this, and Obama said, find me a different conclusion. I don't, treason, no. Weaponization of what should be nonpartisan agencies, intelligence officials, for the partisan purpose of undermining Trump.
This is far from being a partisan attack. What about the 1,000-page final report that came from the bipartisan Senate committee that looked into this. There was an agreement that Russia had a coordinated, very sophisticated aim
Not sophisticated.
Yeah, squarely at supporting Trump. So do you want Russia involved, whether it's bots or real Russian people trying to get people to support Trump more? What is that connection?
First of all, not supporting Trump, undermining Hillary Clinton maybe, not necessarily supporting Trump.
Well, I think necessarily supporting Trump, because by undermining Hillary Clinton, what happens? You support Trump,
but
he
like
wins the election.
I'm a voter who doesn't like Hillary Clinton and was happy to, and I guess I undermined her too by advocating against her.
No, because
I did not vote for Trump or advocate that people vote for Trump.
You're not intentionally developing a relationship with the President of the United States and a foreign
Neither
leader
is Russia.
or adversary. Yes, they are. There was conversations about what his relationship was with Putin. There still is those conversations. I think the relationship has soured in recent years, but what it was in 2016 is very valid to look into it and say, what are you guys doing here? Why would you want help from a foreign? Well, why would you want help from a foreign aid? From foreign assistance when we in America make our own decisions, right? I agree that Americans are brilliant and can make their own decisions, but I also agree that we should all be on the same page and not wanting foreign bots or people infiltrating our social media and trying to convince people that Trump is the best. What's your end game? What is their connection to the results? We have to ask that question, right? What's the connection to wanting Trump to be president?
If they want to waste their money on every dollar they spend on a bot on Facebook, if that's fewer dollars spent on paying for guns to shoot Ukrainians, fine. I mean, who cares? It didn't do anything. It didn't accomplish anything. That is the great, that is the conspiracy unmasked, is the idea that this was like a mind control thing and that voters in the key swing states flipped their position because they had Russian mind control being beamed into them. It's something out of science fiction. It's not the case. It was actually an example of social media type people were overstating the importance or the way the algorithm functions. And look how much information we can narrowly tailor it so you can get exactly the message in front of the people you want. That has led to this kind of technology-driven panic about how vast that power is. No, it's not. It's just campaigning. It's just advertising. It's not mind control. People make independent judgments, and it is drowned out by all the other noise.
Let's say I just listened to the fact that it's just campaigning, and we don't mind Russia influence deciding if they are likening themselves to one president or the other one. Is this going anywhere? Is this worth American taxpayers' time and money to continue to look into something that is done? It's an old issue. Obama is not going to jail. So for the same person that cried witch hunt on the campaign trail for an entire year,
that's a bit rich from the Democratic Party that has tried to put Trump in jail for years.
But he said it was poor strategy, so why would he reflect it? Don't be a mirror to something that you hated. That doesn't make any sense.
Well,
so at least the party should be
revenge.
okay. Well, then that is not the president that you should want. Somebody who seeks revenge all day for the entire.
They're going to try to put him in jail, and he should just cry about it, not do anything about it. Just be sad.
He should lead the country in a time where we need leadership.
All right. Well, he should lead the country. Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. It is Thursday. We've got, what do we have going on? More programming, more news, more debate, more
debates,
fun stuff.
more agreeing on stuff like the
More
Epstein
agreeing?
files.
Do we agree? Are we
think so.
agreeing? Don't pretend we're agreeing when we're not.
Today on Rising, I'll talk about how media companies are caving to President Trump, and that could be terrible in regards to consequences.
And we'll also be discussing, of course, Tulsi Gabbard's latest document dump on Russiagate and her attacks on former President Obama.
And The View's Joy Behar seems to have gotten under Trump's skin this time. But Robby, let's start with what's on your radar.
All right, let's get to it. Why is the Democratic Party so furious about Stephen Colbert's cancellation? Now that is a question I've been asking myself all week as we've covered this, ever since we learned that the late-night host is losing his show after CBS decided that $40 million in losses every year is maybe too high a price to pay. Now, this really shouldn't come as much of a surprise to people. It's hard out there for large traditional television organizations. They now face all sorts of competition from streaming and social media, from independent people who are in some cases a lot funnier than Stephen Colbert and can do what late-night hosts do for a fraction of the cost. Now, I say there's more fun to be had on YouTube, TikTok, Substack, X, elsewhere. I'm certainly having fun. I'm having a ball. It's how more and more people are getting their entertainment and their news from the internet. Late night is going to have to play catch up. It just doesn't have the same relevancy or pack the same punch. So ultimately, this was quite clearly a business decision. But try telling them that. Now, Colbert is certainly acting like this is Donald Trump's fault. Isn't everything. In fact, he recently swore at Trump on air. Jon Stewart went even further, singing an entire profanity-laden song about how much he hates Trump. I won't play the clip because my very patient producers are getting sick of having to bleep every video I've requested this week between this and Hunter Biden. Now look, even Keith Olbermann, perhaps the most relentlessly partisan anti-Trump, anti-Republican, mainstream progressive commentator on the planet, thinks this was probably just a business decision. Again, Keith Olbermann, the textbook case of Trump derangement syndrome, writing on X, well, if they fired him to appease Trump, why are they letting him remain on the air as a lame duck with nobody to stop him from saying whatever he wants for the next 10 months? They may have timed it to use it as a stop to Trump. This is like Phil Donahue getting canceled. Donahue being another former commentator, one I quite liked, who was eventually put out to pasture for business reasons. When Keith Olbermann is providing you a much-needed sanity check, you should be very, very afraid. Now, ultimately, I don't really blame other late-night hosts, Stewart, Kimmel, Fallon, etc., for showing industry solidarity with Colbert. That makes sense to me. But why are Democratic politicians also so upset about the cancellation? And trust me, they are furious. Representative Ted Lieu is actually circulating a petition telling CBS not to cancel Colbert. Doesn't he have more important things to do, possibly on behalf of his constituents? Isn't there somebody who needs something and spends a little more of his time elsewhere? Senator Bernie Sanders also weighed in as well. Bernie writes on X, CBS's billionaire owners pay Trump $16 million to settle a bogus lawsuit while trying to sell the network to Skydance. Stephen Colbert, an extraordinary talent and the most popular late-night host, slams the deal. Days later, he's fired. Do I think this is a coincidence? No. Okay, again, he has no evidence whatsoever this was anything other than a business decision. The show was a huge money loser. I know Bernie isn't a huge fan of capitalism, but generally, when you're losing tons of money, the business pivots. Perhaps under democratic socialism, I guess we would have subsidized terrible political comedy forever. Yeah, that's why I don't like that plan very much. And of course, Senator Elizabeth Warren is equally outraged. Seriously, she will not stop tweeting about this. Does anyone think for a minute, by the way, that various Democratic politicians would be furious if a conservative news channel canceled a conservative show? Or even if a show like the one you're watching right now, Rising, got axed? Now, we speak to perspectives all over the place. But I doubt it would matter to most Democratic officials, except maybe to a few friends of the program who've enjoyed being interviewed here, like Ro Khanna. No, the reason the end of Colbert is so infuriating is because the Democratic Party likes the content, and the content of Colbert was reliably anti-Trump. Just wasn't very funny.
The show's hilarious, but Stephen Colbert is hilarious. We disagree.
No one has ever laughed at the show. No one, not a person.
I laughed yesterday when we played a clip.
That wasn't you.
But really, I think...
See, I'm funny. Stephen Colbert is not.
You're asking why politicians are getting involved. Okay, I think because anybody looking at this plainly who just wants to be honest and say, yes, you're right. All the assertions you made, we don't know. We don't have any details. When we look at the clear picture from A to Z, you can see that CBS was willing to fight this, it seemed, as they watched through what happened the election season. Once Trump became president, we had a different conversation because we understand that Paramount Global has a special interest in an $8 billion merger that'll bring them with Skydance. And so Trump was actively blocking that based on cutting out a pause from a Kamala Harris interview that you did not want to play from a year ago. And so it's just like this vendetta and this personal retribution, that campaign that President Trump is on, is worth being looked at because, one, he's not only a politician, he's the president of the country, he's the top politician. And so if he's so wrapped up in this, what else is happening behind the scenes? And people want to know what all goes into this. I mean, there's so many conversations, and I'm going to talk about it more in my lens about what else they agreed to underneath this cloudy merger. But like, naturally, don't you think that politicians ought to be looking at what's going on and make sure that people are not being forced to bend a knee to President Trump or else? Because that seems to be his tactic. If you're his friend, you get rewarded. If you're not his friend, you get punished. No matter if you're a news network or a major company, he's just punishing everybody who doesn't oblige.
I have a compromise for you.
Okay.
So get this.
Okay.
So we're all, as Democrats, are very, very worried. Don't know that they're trying to make Trump happy. Okay. because they need his approval. They need the administration's approval to do the deal. Okay, here's my compromise. No more government scrutinizing of mergers and acquisitions, no more antitrust, no more any of that. The federal government will just chalk it up to the First Amendment. Government shall make no law, not get involved. You can have corporate consolidations. Facebook can buy every company on the planet if it wants. Government can be, Bernie Sanders can whine about it and Elizabeth Warren can whine about it, but there'll be no government scrutiny of these kinds of deals. Comcast gobbling things up, Google, no more. Government
that generally
totally
comes
hands
from
off.
the Democratic
That's what
Party,
I'm in
correct?
favor of.
Yeah, so why is Trump doing this? That generally comes from the Democratic Party. The people
Right.
who criticize big
Democrats
deals like
want to
this.
get in the
The
way
Comcast
of
deal, I remember
businesses
that.
operating.
No, that's not a blanket statement. They want to make sure that there's not a monopoly, right? To protect the American consumer, protect price fluctuation, protect competitiveness in the market, all stuff that capitalism
That's what
breeds
they say
and
they're
lives
doing, but I
off
don't
of.
trust them at all.
I know,
to
but
do
President
that.
Trump is simply doing this not because it aligns with anything that's in the Republican Party about being part of these deals. It's because of personal retribution. So that should bother
You think
the American-
Democrats
that's
don't
because the
try to block mergers because of political retribution or political calculation? I do not trust. I don't trust either side to say what's in the best
But do you want
interest
to
of
set
consumers.
a standard? Like, do you want to? Colbert Show was canceled 3 days after he called out the company simply for doing something that they actually did do. It looked a little bit bribish.
It loses $40 million.
Okay, and I understand that. I'm a money person too, right?
Yeah.
If it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. The answer to every question is money for the most part.
I just want to know what the standard is. If we're talking about this in your lens too.
Yes.
Okay, maybe I'll save the remainder of my comments for my reaction to your take. But I just want some consistency. Either we're going to have mergers
Well, it needs to start with
of corporations
President Trump.
be political and be subjected to political considerations, in which case you have to live with the fact that the person in charge has politics that you don't like. That's the way it's got to be. Or you can do it my way, my libertarian way, and say, no, we'll have a small government that has nothing to do with this. They can't do anything about it, and companies can buy whatever they want, and we'll have no political considerations. It's one or the other. You can't have this magic fantasy land where, okay, we have the government very involved, but only with the noblest of intentions. That is a fantasy land. Doesn't exist.
Okay, we want to talk about it more. We just told you guys.